Welcome back, listeners. In part one, we took a wild ride through different perspectives on life after death, from the scientific to the spiritual. We explored some really fascinating concepts like near-death experiences and quantum consciousness,
Right.
and we dove into the beliefs of Islam, Hinduism, and Christianity.
A lot of ground to cover.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
But one thing that really struck me was just the sheer variety of after-death beliefs out there.
It's true.
It's like everybody's got their own version of what happens next.
And that diversity
Yeah.
is not just limited to different religions.
Right.
Even within a single religion, there could be a huge range of interpretations.
Like, for example, we talked about how some Christian denominations view hell as this literal place of fire and torment,
Right.
while others see it more metaphorically. It makes you wonder, like, how do we reconcile these different viewpoints?
I think one way is to recognize that many of these beliefs, regardless of their specific imagery or dogma, are trying to grapple with some of the same fundamental questions.
Okay.
Questions about justice, morality, the meaning of life, and what happens to our consciousness after death.
So it's like everyone's trying to piece together the same puzzle, but with different pieces from different angles.
That's a great analogy.
And this leads us to another really interesting point. We've been talking about the afterlife as if it's this singular destination, but a lot of cultures envision it as a more complex landscape
Right.
with multiple realms or planes of existence.
Like a multi-level video game
Whoa, okay.
with different challenges, different rewards,
Yeah.
and even characters to encounter.
That's a fun way to visualize it.
Yeah.
So, what are some examples of these multi-realm afterlives?
Well, in ancient Egyptian mythology, the soul embarked on this perilous journey through the underworld, facing all sorts of tests and challenges along the way.
Right.
The goal was to reach the Hall of Two Truths,
Okay.
where your heart would be weighed against a feather,
Whoa, that's so cool.
symbolizing truth and justice.
Weighing of the heart. That's such a powerful and evocative image.
It is.
What do you think the Egyptians were trying to convey with that concept?
I think it speaks to their belief in accountability,
Okay.
that your actions in life have consequences that extend beyond this physical realm.
Karma, basically.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
It's a reminder to live a life of integrity and righteousness.
And it's fascinating how that concept, like that judgment,
Right.
pops up in various forms in other religions as well.
You're right. It seems to be a pretty universal human concern,
Yeah.
this desire to make sense of good and evil and to believe that justice in some form will prevail.
It's also really interesting how different cultures envision the consequences of that judgment, right?
Yeah.
So the Egyptians had their field of reeds for the worthy souls and then, not so pleasant for those who failed the test.
Right.
What about other cultures? How do their multi-realm afterlives differ?
Well, in Tibetan Buddhism, there's the bardo,
Okay.
which is this transitional state between death and rebirth.
Okay.
Depicted as this liminal space where the soul encounters various deities and experiences visions, both blissful and terrifying.
So it's not just a peaceful waiting room. It's like
No.
an active,
It can be an active.
challenging experience.
Yeah, and the path you take through the bardo is influenced by your karma and the state of your mind at the time of death.
So it really emphasizes that mental and spiritual preparation
It does.
for death.
It does.
Makes you think about the role of free will in the afterlife.
Yeah.
If our actions in this life determine our experiences in the bardo,
Yeah.
does that mean our choices ultimately shape our destiny?
Well, that's a big question,
It is a big one.
and one that theologians and philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. The concept of predestination,
Right.
where a higher power already knows our fate.
Okay.
That's a common theme in a lot of religions.
So it's this paradox of free will versus a predetermined path.
Right.
It's a head scratcher.
It is a head scratcher.
But even if there is some element of predetermination,
Yeah.
wouldn't it still be important to make choices that align with our values and beliefs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Regardless of your specific beliefs about fate and free will,
Right.
living a life of integrity, compassion, and meaning is always going to be beneficial.
Yeah, it's like that old saying,
Uh,
live each day as if it were your last. But
Yeah.
instead of focusing on fear or regret, let's approach it with a sense of purpose and intention.
I love that reframing.
Right.
It's not about fearing death, but about embracing life to the fullest.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of embracing different perspectives, so far we've focused mainly on religious interpretations of the afterlife.
Right.
But what about those who don't subscribe to a particular faith or belief system? What happens to our consciousness, our sense of self, if there isn't a heaven, hell, or a cycle of reincarnation?
That's an important question.
It is.
And it's one that secular humanism addresses directly.
Okay.
So, from a purely scientific standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
consciousness is seen as a product of the brain.
Right.
When the brain dies, consciousness ceases to exist,
Okay.
like a flame being extinguished.
So a definitive ending. No possibility of an afterlife in the traditional sense.
Well, it depends on how you define afterlife.
Okay.
While secular humanism doesn't posit a spiritual realm or continued existence of the soul,
Right.
it does emphasize the lasting impact that we have on the world and the people around us.
Okay.
Our actions, our relationships, the memories we create,
Mm-hmm.
those all have the power to endure long after we're gone.
So it's about focusing on the legacy we leave behind, the ripples we create in the world.
Think of it as a different kind of immortality,
Okay.
not a continuation of our individual consciousness, but a living legacy of love, kindness, and good deeds.
I like that.
Huh.
Our impact on the world becomes our afterlife, in a sense.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to think about it.
It is.
That even though our physical bodies cease to exist,
Right?
the essence of who we are lives on in the hearts and minds of those we've touched.
Like our lives become interwoven with the tapestry of human experience.
Mm-hmm. It's a powerful concept,
It is.
and it can be incredibly comforting.
Yeah.
And it encourages us to focus on making a positive difference in the world, knowing that our actions can have this ripple effect that extends far beyond our own lifespans.
So whether you believe in a spiritual realm, a cycle of rebirth, or a legacy that lives on in the hearts of others, it seems like there's this common thread running through all of these perspectives.
There is.
This emphasis on living a life of meaning, purpose, and connection.
I couldn't agree more.
It's about recognizing that our time on Earth is precious,
Yeah.
and that our choices matter not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. And this brings us to a kind of crucial question.
Okay.
Is there any tangible evidence
Yeah.
beyond faith and belief
Uh-huh.
that points to the existence of life after death?
Well, that's where things get a little more mysterious.
Okay.
And we delve into the realm of the paranormal.
Ooh, now we're talking.
Yeah.
This is where things get a little spooky, right?
It can be.
Yeah,
We've already touched on near-death experiences.
right.
But there are other areas of study that explore unexplained phenomena that seem to defy our current understanding of science and the laws of nature.
Like ghosts.
Exactly. Throughout history,
Okay.
people have reported encounters with apparitions,
Right.
shadowy figures, disembodied voices,
Uh-huh.
entities that seem to linger from beyond the grave.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Well, I approach those things with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Right.
It's important to consider alternative explanations.
Of course.
Like misperceptions, tricks of the light, or even psychological phenomena.
Right, yeah.
But I also acknowledge that there are experiences that science can't easily explain away.
So there's a possibility that some of these ghost sightings could be like genuine glimpses into another realm,
It's possible.
or maybe like residual energy imprints left behind
Right. Could
by
be.
those who have passed on.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, and then there's the whole realm of mediumship,
Yeah.
where individuals claim to be able to communicate with the dead.
Right. Some mediums provide incredibly specific details about deceased loved ones.
Right.
Things they couldn't have possibly known otherwise.
But how do we separate, like, genuine abilities from, clever old reading or outright fraud?
Right.
Like, there have been plenty of cases of fake mediums exposed over the years.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Skepticism is crucial.
Yeah.
However, there are also mediums whose abilities have been studied under controlled conditions.
Oh, wow.
And the results are, well, intriguing, to say the least.
Really?
Even under controlled conditions, there's always room for debate and interpretation.
Well, of course. Of course. But it's definitely a complex and controversial field with no easy answers. Right. But the possibility of communicating with loved ones who have passed on, I mean, that's a compelling idea.
It is compelling.
It really is.
And it speaks to our deep-seated human desire to maintain those connections, even after death has seemingly separated us.
What about other forms of paranormal evidence?
Yeah.
I've heard about electronic voice phenomena, EVP. Isn't that where people record static or white noise and claim to hear voices of the dead?
That's right. EVP enthusiasts believe that spirits can manipulate electronic devices to communicate with the living.
Okay.
Now, skeptics argue that these voices are just random sounds interpreted as meaningful,
Right.
a phenomenon known as pareidolia.
Right.
But some EVP recordings are undeniably eerie and difficult to dismiss as mere coincidence.
It's definitely one of those topics that makes you wonder if there's more to reality than meets the eye.
It does.
And it brings us back to that central theme of this deep dive, the search for meaning and understanding in the face of the unknown.
Exactly. Whether you approach the afterlife through the lens of faith,
Uh-huh.
science, or the paranormal, the human quest to understand death and what lies beyond.
Yeah.
It's a universal and enduring one.
It really is.
Mhm.
It's a journey that's both fascinating and humbling.
It is.
And speaking of journeys, we've still got more ground to cover
We do?
in our exploration of the afterlife.
Sure.
So in
Yeah.
part 3, we're going to delve into the concept of judgment. We'll
Okay.
explore different cultural approaches to grief and remembrance,
Okay.
and we'll even venture into the futuristic realm of digital immortality.
Ooh, exciting.
So it's going to be an intriguing final leg of our journey, right?
It will be.
Join us next time as we continue to unravel the mysteries of life after death.
I'll be there.